There was only one thing unusual about that Friday. My wife wasn't home. A couple of days earlier, we'd had one of those pointless arguments that married people eventually forget about. She decided to spend the weekend at her parents' place. I stayed behind. Honestly, I wasn't upset. Sometimes having the apartment to yourself feels like a vacation. On my way home from work, I stopped at a small convenience store, picked up a few beers, some snacks. Then, I borrowed an old game console from a friend, along with a couple of racing games. The plan was simple. Drink a little, play until I got tired, sleep, nothing more. I live in an ordinary Soviet apartment block on the 9th floor. The top floor, no neighbors above us. Just the roof. My wife and I also have 2 cats. A lazy orange tomcat who spends most of his life sleeping on top of the refrigerator. And a small gray cat that follows people around like a shadow. That night, both of them were unusually quiet. The moment I unlocked the apartment door, something felt wrong. Not dangerous, just wrong. You know that strange feeling when your brain notices something before you do? Like walking into a room and immediately knowing something has changed. I couldn't explain it. Everything looked exactly the same. Nothing was missing. Nothing was out of place. The apartment was silent. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't entirely alone. I laughed it off. Maybe work had just exhausted me. Maybe I was imagining things. Couple of beers later, the feeling faded. I relaxed, spent an hour scrolling through stupid videos online. Then I started playing an old arcade racing game. By then, it was after 10 at night. Outside, the city had gone quiet. Every now and then, I could hear the wind pushing against the building. Nothing unusual, just another peaceful Friday. Until I paused the game. The sound came from the bedroom. Not incredibly loud, but loud enough that I immediately assumed one of the cats had knocked something over. I sighed, set the controller down, and walked to the other room. Nothing. No broken picture frame. No fallen lamp. No books on the floor. Everything was exactly where it should have been. I found the orange cat asleep on top of the refrigerator. He hadn't moved. The gray one was curled up on the back of my armchair. She looked half asleep. Neither of them even reacted when I entered the room. That ruled out the cats. I checked the window. Closed. No cracks. No signs that a bird had hit the glass. Then I remembered something. We lived on the 9th floor. The very top. Nobody above us. Nobody could have dropped anything onto our roof or window. And the sound hadn't come from outside anyway. It sounded like something had fallen inside the room. I checked the electrical outlets, the light switches, even opened the closet for no reason other than convincing myself I was being ridiculous. Everything looked normal. Eventually, I shrugged. Went back to the living room, picked up the controller, started another race. Exactly 10 minutes later, I froze. This wasn't a bang. It sounded like someone dragging a heavy wooden chair. Just for a second. Then silence. Absolute silence. I looked toward the hallway. Neither cat was moving. Both of them were staring in the exact same direction, toward the bedroom, without blinking. I didn't move. Neither did the cats. The apartment was so quiet I could hear my own breathing. For a full minute, nothing happened. No footsteps, no voices, no more scraping, just silence. I finally stood up. I wasn't exactly scared yet, more irritated. There had to be a reason for the noise. Maybe something had fallen behind a cabinet. Maybe one of the old pipes had shifted. Maybe I was letting my imagination get the better of me. I grabbed the TV remote like it was somehow going to protect me and walked toward the bedroom. Every floorboard seemed louder than usual. I reached the doorway, flipped on the light. Nothing. The room looked exactly the way I'd left it. The bed was untouched. The wardrobe doors were closed. The curtains hung perfectly still. No chair had moved. No furniture was out of place. I even crouched down and checked under the bed. Empty. Then I opened the wardrobe. Nothing. No broken shelves. No fallen boxes. Nothing that could have made a sound like that. I stood there for a few seconds, listening, waiting. The apartment stayed perfectly still. Finally, I laughed at myself, quietly. Nerves, that had to be it. I'd had 2 beers, worked all week, spent the evening alone in a silent apartment. My brain was probably creating problems that didn't exist. Still, I left the bedroom light on. For some reason, I didn't want that room sitting in the dark anymore. Back in the living room, the game didn't feel nearly as fun. The engine sounds, the music, everything suddenly seemed too loud. I paused it, turned the volume almost all the way down, then sat there staring toward the hallway, waiting for another sound. It never came. At least, not for a while. Around 3 in the morning, I reached into my jacket for another cigarette. The pack was empty. I checked the kitchen. Nothing. I checked the drawer by the front door. Still nothing. I sighed. Normally, I just go to bed. But after everything that had happened, sleeping wasn't exactly an option anymore. So I grabbed my wallet, put on my jacket, locked the apartment behind me. The moment I stepped into the stairwell, I felt strangely relieved. Like whatever had been bothering me was still inside. Outside, the air was cool. It was early May. One of those nights where winter had finally let go, but summer hadn't arrived yet. The streets were almost empty. The convenience store was only a 10-minute walk away. To get there, I had to cut through a courtyard, then a narrow path between an apartment block and an old kindergarten. I'd walked that route hundreds of times. It never bothered me before. Tonight, every shadow looked deeper. Every sound seemed louder. A dry branch snapped beneath my shoe. I nearly jumped out of my skin. I laughed at myself. I'm acting like a kid. A few minutes later, I reached the store without any problems. Bought cigarettes, another bottle of water, skipped the beer this time. On the walk back, that's when everything changed. A stray dog exploded out from beneath a fence only a few feet away. It wasn't attacking me. It looked terrified. Its tail was tucked tightly between its legs. It let out one panicked yelp, then bolted into the darkness without looking back. I stood frozen, watching it disappear. Then, from somewhere, inside the bushes, several cats began screaming. Not fighting, screaming. The sound echoed through the empty courtyard. Every hair on my arm stood up. For the first time that night, I stopped feeling ridiculous. Something wasn't right. And somehow, I knew I wasn't done with whatever had started inside my apartment. By the time I reached my apartment building, I was trying to convince myself I'd simply had a bad night. The dog, the cats, the strange noises, it all had to be connected somehow. Maybe I was just exhausted. Maybe I'd let my imagination take over. The courtyard was brighter than the alley. Several streetlights were still working. A few apartment windows glowed in the darkness. Seeing those lights actually made me relax. Then I looked up at my apartment and my heart stopped. Every light was off. Every single one. I knew for a fact I'd left the lights on. The bedroom, the hallway, the living room, all of them. But now, the windows were completely black. At first, I thought the power had gone out. Then I noticed something. Other apartments still had electricity. TVs flickered behind curtains. Kitchen lights were on. Only my apartment was dark. I kept staring, trying to make sense of it. That's when I thought something moved. Just for a split second, a shadow crossed one of the windows. Too large to be one of the cats. Too slow to be my imagination. I couldn't make out a shape. I couldn't make out a shape. Only movement. And then nothing. The window was still again. I felt my stomach drop. Every instinct told me not to go upstairs. So I didn't. I sat down on the bench outside the entrance, lit a cigarette, then another. I must have spent 20 minutes sitting there, staring at those dark windows, trying to come up with a logical explanation. Every answer sounded stupid. Maybe someone had broken in. Maybe the power really had failed. Maybe I hadn't left the lights on after all. No, I remembered flipping every switch before sitting back down to play. I was certain the apartment should have been glowing. Instead, it looked abandoned, cold, watching me. My hands were shaking. Not from the cold, from the idea of walking back inside. Then I remembered something. My phone. It was still in my jacket pocket. Without thinking twice, I called my friend Sergey. Luckily, it was Friday night. He answered. I gave him the shortest explanation possible. I think someone's inside my apartment. He laughed, asked if I'd been drinking. I told him to just come. 20 minutes later, his old sedan pulled into the parking lot. He stepped out carrying a flashlight from his trunk. One look at my face, and he stopped smiling. You actually look scared. I am. He looked up at my windows. They're dark. I know. You leave the lights on. Yeah. He didn't ask any more questions. Instead, he clicked on the flashlight. Let's go see what's waiting for us. Neither of us even considered taking the elevator. If someone or something was really inside, we didn't want to be trapped in a metal box. So we started climbing. 9 floors, one step at a time. By the 6th floor, neither of us was talking anymore. By the 8th, the only sounds were our breathing and the echo of our footsteps. Then we reached my door, and from the other side, I could have sworn I heard something whisper. Sergey looked at me. What? You don't hear that. He stood perfectly still for a few seconds, then slowly shook his head. I don't hear anything. I wasn't convinced. It wasn't really a voice, more like someone whispering just beyond a closed door. Too quiet to understand, just enough to make the hairs on my neck stand up. Sergey sighed. Your nerves are getting to you? Maybe he was right. I unlocked the apartment the moment the door opened. A cold draft rolled out into the hallway. Not freezing, just wrong. The kind of cold that doesn't belong inside a building. I reached for the light switch. Nothing. No light. Only darkness. Sergey switched on his flashlight. Its beam cut through the hallway. The first thing we heard was the sound beneath our shoes. I looked down. The floor was covered in broken glass. Every light bulb in the apartment had shattered. Not just the ones that had been turned on. Every single bulb. Hallway, bedroom, kitchen, living room. All of them. The glass was scattered everywhere. Neither of us spoke. We slowly moved deeper inside. The apartment looked disturbed. Not destroyed, just wrong. A chair had been pushed across the room. Books were lying on the floor. A cabinet door hung half open. It looked as if someone had searched the apartment without stealing anything. Then Sergey's flashlight stopped. He didn't move. Neither did I. What is that? His voice barely came out as a whisper. I followed the beam. There, on the bedroom wall, was a black stain, roughly 2 feet across. It wasn't paint. It wasn't mold. The wallpaper around it looked scorched, as if something incredibly hot had touched the wall for only a second. The edges were burned. The center was almost completely black. I stepped closer. There was no smell, no smoke, nothing. I reached out, then stopped. Every instinct I had told me not to touch it, so I didn't. Sergey slowly lowered the flashlight. I don't like this. Neither did I. Not even a little. We searched every room. Closets, bathroom, balcony, under the beds, behind the curtains. Nothing. The apartment was empty. Completely empty. And somehow, that made it even worse. Because something had obviously been there. Something had moved the furniture. Something had shattered every light bulb. Something had left that mark on the wall. But whatever it was already gone. Or it was somewhere we couldn't see. Neither of us said another word. We grabbed the unopened beers from the kitchen, locked the apartment behind us, and went back downstairs. Neither of us wanted to spend another minute inside. Sergey and I spent the rest of the night sitting outside the apartment building. Neither of us felt like going back upstairs. We opened the beers I'd bought earlier and talked until sunrise. Mostly, we tried to come up with reasonable explanations. Maybe there had been an electrical surge. Maybe someone had broken in. Maybe stress had gotten the better of me. The more we talked, the less any of those explanations made sense. An electrical fault doesn't throw books across a room. A burglar doesn't leave without taking anything. And stress. Stress doesn't shatter every single light bulb in an apartment. The next morning, I called an electrician. He checked every outlet, every switch, every wire he could reach. When he finished, he simply shrugged. I can't find anything wrong. No short circuit, no damaged wiring, nothing. The black mark on the bedroom wall stayed exactly where it was. I covered it with fresh wallpaper. I never told my wife it had existed. Some things are better left unsaid. 2 days later, I finally found the cats. Both of them had been hiding behind the kitchen cabinets, alive, but terrified. It took weeks before either of them acted normally again. Even now, Loud noises send them running, as if they're still afraid of something I can't see. Only Sergey and I know what happened that night. Everyone else would probably laugh. Maybe they're right. Maybe there is a perfectly logical explanation. Maybe. But every now and then, when my wife spends the night away, I catch myself looking toward the bedroom, waiting. Listening? Hoping the apartment stays quiet. It's been over a month now. Nothing else has happened. No strange sounds. No broken lights. No whispers. Just silence. Still, I never spend another night there alone, because whatever walked through my apartment that Friday never felt like it came to hurt me. It felt like it was looking for something. And every time I think about that night, one question keeps coming back. What would have happened if I hadn't gone out for those cigarettes?